I'm Jesse Burst of Smart Grid News. I'm your host and your moderator today. And this is the science of customer engagement, actually the first in a series on this topic. Today we're going to focus on printed reports, typically the first step in this journey, and certainly one of the very most important. You've got to get that piece right if you're going to get your customer permission and trust. So the good news is there's help on this topic. We can turn to behavioral science to give us insights. We can turn to experience and lean on the lessons learned by those who've gone before. And we're going to tap into both of those sources today. I want to introduce our happy presenters today. And I'll introduce each one in more detail when it's their turn to present. But real quickly, I'm Jesse Burst. Smart Grid News is the Internet's oldest and largest smart grid site. Also joining us, Patty Duran, the Executive Director of the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative. It's North America's leading voice for consumer-safe and consumer-friendly smart grid. Welcome, Patty.
Hello, everyone.
Also here is Dr. Paul Cole. He's Vice President of Consumer Products for Tendril, one of the leading customer engagement companies. Thanks, Paul, for stopping by.
Thanks, Jesse, for having me.
Also with us is Delta Sonderman. She's a Product Development Manager at Duke Energy. Duke is one of the country's really pioneering utilities. So, Delta, thanks for taking the time out today.
Well, thank you, Jesse.
Real quickly, you probably know the rules, but in case you're new, you will receive a copy of the slides. We'll send it to the email you used to register. You'll also get links to video replays. We slice the presentation into bite-sized pieces. You can review the whole thing or any piece that you want. You can also send those links to friends if there's something you want them to hear, or colleagues. You can ask questions as we go along, and also we'll send you a link to a frequently asked questions document. So even if we can't get to every question during the session, we'll be sure to get back to you with answers. And here's what we're going to cover. Patty's going to start us off, and she's going to talk about what research is telling us about today's electric power consumers. And it's really, and also about the importance of customer segmentation. So I think that's going to be very helpful. Paul's going to spend some time on the customer engagement journey, how you get from paper all the way up to this interactive customer engagement. So I think you're going to get some intriguing insights from Paul. And Delta is going to finish things up and talk about how Duke Energy actually put this into daily practice, how they operationalized this, how they experimented, fine-tuned it, and then rolled it out at scale, and just how they did it. So I'm real pleased to welcome Patty. I was a co-founder of the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative, and I think my single best accomplishment would be part of the committee that voted to bring Patty on as our permanent executive director. She's got I think, a very useful and diverse background. She's been in the smart grid space at Georgia Tech. She's been on the advocacy side with the Sierra Club. She's been on the business side with Hewlett-Packard and Compaq. And that makes really a great base for running an organization that's got multiple stakeholders. So, Patty, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. And welcome, everyone. So the purpose of my talk today is to give you an overview of the type of research that we do and do as deep a dive as I can in the time that I have in terms of the science of consumer engagement and what we know so far about consumers. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit chartered to be the trusted source representing consumers and really all of the stakeholder community. But our main focus is consumers. What do they think and what do they know, and what products and services are they interested in? And this page shows a quick snapshot of our members. We've actually had some members join since this was done. We are at over 80 members now. And I think the rapid pace of growth of our membership, considering that we're only 2 years old, is a testament to the fact that people see a real need for more consumer engagement, research, and education. So as I said, we're 2 years old. We're a membership organization, and our members fall into 3 main categories, those being utilities, technology companies, and nonprofit affiliates. And everyone likes to know the elevator statement. This is actually even shorter than an elevator ride. But our mission is to advance a consumer-friendly and consumer-safe smart grid. We certainly have a more robust mission than that. We actually have a 15-page, 3-year strategic plan with a longer mission than that. But that's just a quick mission for everyone on the call to understand what we're about in a very short sentence. We've already delivered 5 pieces of foundational research in the first 2 years, so Obviously, I don't have time to get into all of it, but I've selected the one piece that I think this audience is most interested in hearing about, which is the science of consumer engagement. So I have a couple of visuals here. This visual shows the different types of members that we have, and I wanted to show this to you because it's really important that we get the best brains at the table, that we all learn from each other, and that we all influence each other, because the grid, the electric grid, is very complex. The smart grid adds an additional layer of complexity of communications and computing technology, and then we have another layer of complexity with trying to activate and educate consumers into spaces they've never been in before and cross the technology chasm. So we need everyone at the table, and so you'll see we have, this is just a snapshot, we actually have over 24 members in each one of these categories, but you can just see quickly who's at the table. And then I have a few slides here about what we do. What do we actually do to move our mission forward and move the needle? And so we conduct focus groups. We actually have some happening right now this week. We also do market research to understand how consumers think and buy and know energy and electricity, and ideation sessions where we talk to consumers and thought leaders about what's the future going to be, what kind of apps will we have, how can we engage consumers, what pricing plans will they want, what sort of logo, tagline, messages resonates with consumer, to try to see into the future and shine a light on that path. And we collaborate together. So we have a website filled with our members' research. We know we're not the only ones out there doing research. If there's anything out there, member or not, that's worthy of knowledge that we think the industry wants to have or that is interesting about consumers, we put it on our website. And we also document best practices. And we have secondary research that we do, where we do meta-analyses, or we do research about research. That's a little bit of a definition of what a meta-analysis is. And finally, we help educate. This is a new space we're moving into this year. Our first 2 years have been focused on foundational research and building the organization. And now we're ready to help educate consumers and help our members educate consumers. Our members represent tens of millions of people collectively, and so with their help, we'll be able to reach a lot of people. And so the middle picture is a snapshot of our fact sheets. We have 4 fact sheets now about the smart grid that are available to regulators, to members, to general consumers. We have them on our website. We'll push them out on our social media once we get that campaign going. We're also doing consumer-facing videos where we're addressing the anti-smart meter campaign directly with a myths video, and we're doing educational videos that just promotes the benefits of the smart grid. And we have a social media campaign we'll be launching this year, as well as a consumer-facing website with blogs and frequently asked questions. So just moving on into the research now. This particular piece of research is called our Consumer Pulse and Segmentation Study. In that research, we talked to over 2,000 U.S. residential consumers, and we hired a professional research firm to do this work. And this work actually, it has over a 95% statistically significant accuracy in terms of what consumers think and know about energy. And as we know, everyone is different. Everyone is an individual. We all think a little bit different about energy. Some of us think we want to spend a lot of time on playing with games and going online. Others think we don't want to have anything to do with it at all, that it's boring and no one cares beyond flipping a switch and getting a cheap bill. And then there's a spectrum of opinions and attitudes all between those two. But it's not practical to create programs and services and messages for everyone individually. And so what we do, what everyone has to do that operates in a market, is segment the market. And so the first commandment of marketing is to segment the market and to choose the best segments and then create the best programs and services that you can to attract your best segment. Okay, so this segmentation framework that I'm about to show you was created from the Consumer Pulse and research study that we did. We've done 2 waves, and we're doing a 3rd wave this summer. It's an effort to understand and benchmark consumers and watch the needle as it moves, as it definitely will move as smart meters continue to be deployed, as electric vehicles reach greater penetration, as more pricing plans get deployed, and as consumers become more engaged and aware about electricity. So these are the 5 main segments that we created out of the people that we spoke to. A couple things I want to point out here. The Concerned Green segment is the largest. That does not mean that there are more environmentalists than anyone else in the country. All Concerned Green means is that they have answered a few questions, which indicates they see the potential benefit for the environment with the smart grid. It doesn't mean they're easy pickings or that they're going to come running to you with any program you offer. It just means they have a viewpoint where they understand that renewable energy needs to be ramped up more and they want to help that, or maybe they've donated to an environmental organization, or maybe they've purchased a green cleaning product for their home, or they've expressed a desire that the country move on quickly to address climate change. And those types of people with those views and mindsets are interested in particular messages that would resonate with them. And I'll go through each of these now. Okay, so these segments don't resonate to the area of the country that this graphic places them on. Every segment is in every section of the country. And what I want to emphasize here that our findings show, and not only our findings, but every study that I've seen shows that one size does not fit all when it comes to understanding consumers and reaching them. And we can look across the field outside of energy and look at any number of consumer segments. We can look at telephony. We can look at home products like Procter & Gamble. We can look at automobiles and see that every segment, every company, every industry segment creates consumer segments and then creates products and messages to target those segments. So this is a major transition for the utility industry. We're in the middle of it now. And so whether you choose to use these segments or you've got different segments, the fact is that people fall into broad categories very similar to these. And all I want to say here is that every region will have to do their own segmentation and understand their own mix. These are what we found across the U.S. generally, and they exist everywhere. Okay, so this segment, Easy Street, is basically, we call it that because they're generally the higher income and higher levels of education of the segments. They don't have any problems paying their bills. They tend to be more liberal in their outlook, and they're not really interested in spending much time on energy. They do see the environmental benefits and think that's important to save energy for those reasons. They don't want to waste, but they're not likely to be heavily engaged. And so we have created for each segment a section on what we think those segments would benefit to hear from in terms of products and services and messages. They'll be generally two most challenging segments to engage. So they'll be interested in products and services and messages that help them set it and forget it. Then we have the Concerned Greens, the biggest segment that I told you about. They tend to also be moderate and liberal. They also tend to be high income and high education, but they do have serious concerns about the environment. They tend to be largely white and tend to be more female than male. They're very receptive to messages that intertwine saving energy and saving money with helping the environment. And you wouldn't just say save the planet or anything like that. You would say help the grid ramp up renewable energy, help electric vehicles use energy that would otherwise go to waste by charging overnight, and messages similar to that. This group also really likes new technology. They're early adopters, so they would be your best segment to approach to help learn what consumers want in terms of products and services. They'll be in the front lines for that. The Do-It-Yourself and Save group is very diverse. They have a large Hispanic group, only average levels of education, not uneducated, not overeducated, just average. They tend to be conservative, and they tend to be very interested in do-it-yourself. So they will be very interested in time-of-use programs. They want to save money, and they're not really interested in any kind of environmental message. So this is the segment where you would say, manage your energy, save money, do it yourself, and they would really respond well to that. Young America, these are the people just out of college. They may be living in apartments. They may be just out of high school, They tend to just be in the early stages of beginning their career and their lifestyle choices. They are very concerned about the environment, though. You know, this is the group that may have driven Obama into office or that respond to Al Gore's type of messages. They're not necessarily interested in environmental programs, but they are interested in finding out how to become more sustainable. So they're not easy pickings. There's no one here that's an easy picking. Everyone has to be approached in the right way and offered an easy way to understand how the smart grid works for them and what they can do to manage their energy. And so this group would be more of a long-term development opportunity and enter into home ownership. And then the last segment, this is our traditionals. This is going to be your least likely segment to become engaged in the smart grid. They're predominantly elderly. They're very conservative, and they see no problems with the way energy is consumed or produced now. They don't see anything worrying about the environment, and they're really interested in their comfort. However, they are interested in making sure they don't waste. So there's some small opportunities there for engaging the traditionals. But in terms of your best segments, this would not be one of them. So we didn't really need a big study to know this. I think everyone knows this, but it's important that we have it documented. And that is that most people don't know anything about the smart grid. In fact, over 50% of the people have never even heard of that term. And another 20 to 25% have heard of the term, but have no idea what it means. And so now we're into the 70% range. And that only leaves about a quarter of people that actually do know what it is, and who knows what they really think. But overall, what we're doing is we're tracking favorability. Of those that are aware of the smart grid and smart meter and say they know what it means, most of them are favorable toward it. So now when you think about how many people have never heard of it, and then how many people have heard of it but have positive feelings, that's very high, either neutral or very high. The actual number of people who are opposed to the smart grid is quite tiny. And I think we all know that's a very vocal minority out there, but we've documented that here. And then what we did was we read participants a series of messages to try to get an understanding of how each message, both positive and negative, would either increase or decrease their support for the smart grid. And you can read this across. If you see the long bars, how they change as we go through these next couple of slides, you'll see how they change according to the segment, which falls in rows. So you'll see Easy Street is purple, and Concerned Greens is greens, and Traditionals is brown. So the first message, smart grid projects creates tens of thousands of jobs and an estimated billions. You'll see that increases support. The next one, many components of our grid are decades old and wearing out. That increases support. We actually read 8 positive messages, and we read, I think, 6 negative messages. So you'll see, in many cases, the negative message does not decrease support very much, although it did decrease support a lot for the traditionals. If you scan your eye across the right side on the brown column, you'll see that bar is increasing on the decreased support row. And so what this does is it helps everyone understand how to message the smart grid and the smart meter according to the segments in ways that they would be interested in hearing. And I don't have time to dive into all this. All, I guess, 16 questions are in this research and on our website, available for anyone to download at any time. There's no charge.
Kent asks, Patty, what effort is the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative making to inform state regulators of these segments and of the importance of segmentation? Because traditional approvals tend to be, one size fits all. And I'll just add on to what Kent said. I was just in, I don't want to get many trouble, so I'll say a large western state on the West Coast. They were complaining that their regulators, they had wanted to do segmentation, and the regulator said, anything you offer to one group, you must offer to them all.
Yep, that is a big problem, and I recognize that problem. I've heard that problem. I've actually heard it said myself at NARUC meetings. And what I'm doing, what SGCC is doing, is we have been invited and are making progress getting to know NARUC and getting to know the committee chairs. I was invited to speak at the winter meeting and presented this research. And it was a very full room. It was a consumer education committee. And I presented this research and emphasized strongly to regulators there that one size fits all is the wrong approach, that it will be very challenging for utilities to address consumer needs at that level. And I gave this actual piece of research and showed them that consumers do want time of use variable rate pricing, and consumers fall into different categories. And the research was very well received. I got a lot of questions and a lot of compliments. And then, unfortunately, the very next morning, the plenary speaker on the stage said, people don't want time of use pricing, people only want one thing, and really spoke oppositionally to what I had said. And I went up to him afterwards and asked where his research was, and he didn't have any. So it's really challenging to overcome that issue. And in terms of what we're doing, I'm speaking at NARUC, and I'm also working with some members who are partners who've invited me to speak at the regulatory level at
That's very helpful.
priority states.
Well, thank you. We've got only 30 seconds, but one more quick one from Matt, who wants to know if you have any insights as to which segment is most likely to produce opponents, or if there's any common behaviors and beliefs that tie together those opponents.
Well, the slide that's up right now, the excellence in consumer engagement, is actually the piece of research that deals with how to avoid creating components.
Okay.
We documented there in this one best practices for engaging consumers, and that's on our website as well.
Thank you, Patty. Very helpful. We got a number of complimentary comments in our question box, so thank you again for that. I now want to bring up Dr. Paul Cole. He does have a doctorate in psychology, and he leads Tendril's efforts to engage consumers. He's the Vice President of Consumer Products at Tendril, so he knows whereof he speaks. So, Paul, please inform us about the customer journey.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Patty, that was a great job. Very, very interesting to hear. I want to talk about 4 things today. I want to talk about Tendril's perspective on the customer journey and how we think of the journey as opposed to engagement. I want to talk then about the notion of persistence. If you come from the energy efficiency world, the question about behavioral-oriented interventions is always about, are they persistent? From a smart grid point of view, it's a bit different, but we've taken the notion of persistent behavior change and applied it across products. So the next thing I'll do is talk about how we've done that from paper to email to the web. And finally, I'll wrap up with a brief discussion of some of the findings. Tendril is a computing platform company that provides smart energy solutions from efficiency, smart grid, demand response, and home energy management. We are based in Boulder. So I think the industry is clearly agreed at this point that energy efficiency, smart grid, energy management is not purely a technical problem. It's a human problem as well as a technical problem. And I think the industry, with the help of people like Patty, are learning how to think about segmentation and where to start the set of services. We think about engagement over time. So we are starting to think about not just how do you engage a consumer in a certain utility offering or product, but how you sequence those products. How do you understand where a consumer is likely to start, what they may be interested in next, and how do you position those products over time? I come from the Boston area, so if I decided I was going to run the marathon today, I wouldn't go out and start a 10-mile run. I would go out and probably sign up with a training group at my local gym and start running 1 or 2 miles. So we know that when people change, when people try something new, they try it in small steps, and that once those steps are successful, the success leads to higher levels of interest, motivation, and whether it's a willingness to continue in a program or try another program. So we like to think about products and services from that point of view. So when I talk about home energy reports, I'm going to talk about them as a starting point and how to use them to move to other kinds of products and services you as a utility may be providing. So at Tendril, we think that customers move from awareness to insight to action. And so we've provided a series of products all the way from home energy reports to what we call orchestration or smart home energy management. And we like to think about helping utilities move customers along that journey from a report to a web portal application, a mobile application, to real-time pricing or demand response. Today I'm going to talk about the behavioral science side of it. I'm not going to talk about the building energy, but our products support and have two basic frameworks that inform the products. I'm also going to talk about paper reports and the lower side of the journey. So how do you move people from a paper report into a web application? So one of the things we've learned from behavior science is this notion of persistence. So when we talk about helping people save energy, when we talk about getting people to enroll in programs, getting people to accept smart meters, what's important is not that you can provoke a change, but that change remains over time, that it's persistent. That means that it's habitual. And what the behavior science research tells us, going back 50 years, is that creating persistent change is, one, difficult to do, but two, there's a series of very clear elements that need to be here. And these are the four elements. The elements are the ability to set a goal, the ability to have information and action, specific steps to make progress to the goal, the ability to get feedback against that goal, and to do that in the context of a social environment that supports that. And you can think about that across all of the health kinds of programs, all of our educational programs. They all are built on the same kind of premise. And the other two pieces of that are really personalization and participation. So if you think about what our educational institutions, how they function, they don't focus on lectures anymore. They focus on some balance between lectures and seminars. And so what that tells us is that people learn not just by being spoken to, but by interacting with the information. So the two pieces that are important is how do you make sure that information is relevant to people, but also how do you create opportunities for people to participate, to engage with information. So let's talk about paper reports. So what we know across consumers, kind of independent of the segmentation, of course there are differences, as the segmentation research tells us, but what we know across the customers is that energy is not necessarily high on people's mind, right? It's not exactly one of the things that costs the most in their house typically. It's not something that they spend a lot of time thinking about. And what the paper report begins to do is enable people to start to think about energy, start to create some awareness about energy. So all of a sudden a paper report with a social comparison, with information over time begins to give people a hook, begins to give people a context for how to interpret, how to consider their energy use. And it's a big step forward, but it's a step around awareness. It's a step that people are beginning to think about. So a paper report is an example of one-way communication. And engagement in one-way communication like a lecture is limited. There's an impact, but in terms of creating persistent change, habitual change, participation, engagement, interaction requires another level of what psychologists call internalization. The motivation is internalized. Your goal is something you've decided to pursue independent of external factors. A real quick thing here is that we don't provide a goal. We think that in a paper report, it's important for people to identify with the information. So in a context like a web, that's where we provide a goal and we allow people to set goals. In a paper report, it's important to provide a level of support and customer support. When you think about scaling these kinds of systems, there's a number of things to consider. These are some of them in terms of once you get into the millions of reports, what it takes to build a computer system that supports that. I'm not going to go into detail, but it's important to think about the volume when you build these kind of solutions. So we see email as a way to then begin to move people from paper reports into a more interactive method. And there are a couple of things we do. One is this notion of challenges, where we provide kind of fun activities through email, and we ask people to interact and to post a comment, a kind of gaming activity. The next one is a tutorial. And so tutorials break up, this is around engagement, but you could do it around DR, you could do it about smart grid. Break up a part of a piece of information that's important to get through to your customers and provide it over time. So we've built a tutorial about energy efficient lighting. And well, this is an example. Week 1, we deliver a small animation and an activity about understanding what's going on in your house. Week 2 is another animation with an assessment. Week 3 is a personalized shopping list. Week 4 is kind of a little bit about habits. And what we've seen is when you break up information, when you engage people with kind of fun activities and make this small, bite-sized, we found in a small study, but a significant study, very high uptake. On the website, we integrate all these. One study that we have continued, which is a Cape Light Compact, from a pure behavioral approach with a web portal with real-time data, we have 2.5 years of 9% savings with weekly logins. And that's an example of the kind of persistence you can get with a behavioral method.
Thank you, Paul. And in the interest of time, we are going to have to move on, but we did get some very interesting questions, including from overseas. And as before, we will be answering these questions by email in a frequently asked questions document. You'll get a link to that as well as a link to the slides. This is the Science of Customer Engagement webinar, and it's the first in a series, so we'll be continuing down this path with Paul and with others in future webinars. Watch this space. We'll also email you as well. Next, I want to bring up Delta Sonderman from Duke Energy. She's an MBA. Background includes brand management, product management, and advertising. And today, she conceives, designs, and deploys energy efficiency products and services for Duke Energy. Duke has certainly one of the country's leaders in modernizing the grid, but also in sharing their findings and learnings with the rest of the industry. I think that's one of the great things about our industry. That sharing in general, but certainly Duke in particular is one of the very best examples. So Delta, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Jesse, and I appreciate having the opportunity to talk with you and others about the work that Duke Energy has done with our home comparison report. We've put a lot of energy into the design, testing, and approach for this product for our customers. And this looks familiar to you, probably from what you saw in Paul's presentation, that the home energy report provides that normative comparison for customers. It engages them in energy efficiency. It shows them how they compare against other households, and then provides them with actions. Again, the same loop that Paul talked about in terms of helping customers see where they stand, providing them recommended actions, and then encouraging change and providing that feedback. And the product that we've put together, on average, our customers are saving around 200 kWh every year. The product, or the MyHer report, which is the My Home Energy report from Duke Energy, it provides customers with a systematic way to understand their energy use. In talking to our customers, we found out that it's hard for them to keep track of their energy use. So by providing them a regularly received report that pushed out to them, it helps them get engaged with their energy usage. Our reports contain easy-to-read charts that illustrate performance. Again, the regular feedback is there to help the customer know where they stand in terms of their energy consumption, and it keeps the information meaningful through targeted messaging. And some of what Patty talked about earlier in terms of segmentation, we're not necessarily using segmentation schema much like she presented. However, we are providing customized messaging to our customers based on what we know about them in order to provide a very specific experience for the customer. You know, in terms of these kinds of products and services for a utility, we certainly have benefits for the customer, but we also say, how is this helping out our own goals as a company? And so for Duke Energy, our energy efficiency, our comparison report is part of our overall energy efficiency portfolio. we found that customers who are receiving this report have a higher level of satisfaction with the company. And it does strengthen customer engagement. As you have heard from both Paul and Patty, engaging the customer in energy efficiency starts the journey for them. It helps them to become more, to take a higher ownership in terms of their energy efficiency. And one of the things that we've done with our program is we have a very strong call support group, so that we've been able to track our customers who are calling in and asking questions. So we've heard from about a little over 1% of our customers who are receiving the report, and this table shows what kind of calls that we're getting. As you can tell, a lot of the calls are about energy efficiency. They want to make sure that their reports are accurate. Because we are using some third-party data, we don't always necessarily have the square footage correct or the age of the home right. So customers are calling in and engaging with us to get that information correct on their report so they can get an accurate comparison. We're also, you'll see, we also have customers opt out. And that is, as an opt-out program, we do make opting out very easy for our customers, and that's something that I recommend to all of you guys who may be considering a report, is that we are not segmenting in terms of who we send this report to, other than in terms of some very broad characterizations. But customers do choose to move out of the program, so we do accept that and move forward. To give you a little bit of background with this project, we started working on a comparison report at Duke Energy back in 2009. In the period from 2010 through 11, we ran pilots, both in our Ohio and South Carolina service areas. We used a manual operation, a manual process, internal resources to do the analytics and to create the report and print it and mail it. One of the things we realized that as we did these pilots, that we did not have the infrastructure for commercializing this in a large scale. It was okay to do it internally, but to do the level of sophistication, the level of customization that we wanted, we did put the product out for RFP and look in seeking an implementation vendor, and that was Tendril. We selected their expertise in terms of data management, because that's very key in terms of creating a quality report for the customer. So today, we are commercialized in the state of Ohio, our jurisdiction there. We're mailing to over 240,000 customers, and we really went live with Tendril in April. And they're able to provide us a very systematic application of data integration, analysis, and report generation. I do want to stress that this is a data-driven offer. The amount of data that we're collecting and compiling into the report includes not only energy analytics, but also customer analytics. Duke Energy has, over the years, kept track of customer participation in our energy efficiency programs. So because we know what programs our customers have participated in, when we present offers to them or present messaging, we cannot present them with something that they have already participated in. This is a really high-level look at our report, the report that Tendril is creating for us, two-sided. And as you can see on the front, we have a bar chart there that shows how the customer performed against their comparative group in the last month. So we're using actual comparison data there, the customer's data versus their peer group. Underneath that bar chart is our recommendations or actions for that specific customer. So based on what we know about their home, we're delivering up actions that pertain to them. On the back of the report, we have a 13-month trend. Again, this compares that household's use compared to the average as well as efficient home within their peer group. And I'll tell you, folks, this 13-month trend is probably the most popular part of the whole report, is people want to see how they're doing over time. And then underneath that is another section of customer messaging, and this is information that is customer specific, where we take what we know specifically about that customer and message them so that the content that we're giving is relevant and meaningful to that customer. When we look at targeting high level, we are having very broad targeting of the folks that are receiving the report. Again, residential, we need 13 months of data. There's 12 months in order to generate that chart. But one of the most interesting things that we learned as we went through this is the participation dynamics, that there are constantly people moving and coming in and going out of our participation pool as people move or as they hit that 13 months of data. So just wanted to make you all aware of some of the dynamic aspects of creating and operationalize a report like this. So in the last few minutes that I have, I really want to just point out, what are the things that to consider. For anybody who's thinking about putting out and having a comparison report within their portfolio, understand that customers move toward the norm. Paul talked about setting goals, and in a comparison report, you have the goal of the normal home, the average home. So customers who are doing better than norm sometimes will slip backwards and go back toward the norm. So they're not saving energy, they're starting to use more. So just have to be aware of that in terms of how you go to market. Sometimes bad news, unfavorable news is not always bad. Customers may not like it that they're not as efficient as they think, but once they know that, then they can start taking action. One of the things under design I really think is critical is this idea of accuracy equals credibility. We work very hard with Duke Energy to make sure that the report that we're generating and sending to that customer is as accurate as possible. Because if we aren't providing good information and valid information, that impacts the credibility that our customers have for Duke Energy. So that's really critical. So that really gets down to another one of the bullet points under data quality is more important than data quantity. You're better off making sure you have a lot of accuracy rather than a lot of information in that report. So the list is here to talk about. I did want to leave some time for questions at the end, though, Jesse.
Right. Thank you, Delta. Very much, very helpful and very interesting. Let me start with a question. Delta, I'll ask if you are considering this, and Paul, I'll ask if Tendril does any work on this. But Stephen wanted to know how these principles we just learned relate to gamification.
I guess I will say that Duke Energy, we are considering gamification. That would right now we have a paper product, but we're definitely looking and seeing what it would take to create an online experience for our customers. And the gamification is definitely a piece of that. That's a tool that really encourages engagement and return, that stickiness that we all look for with our products and services.
And Paul, kind of in tune with Patty's drumbeat of segmentation, I'm hearing that gamification works with a certain percentage of the population, but not with all. How does Tendril handle that?
What's important is when you think about gamification, we certainly take that serious and embed it in some of our products, is not that we're here to create energy games for people. We're here to take some of the learning around games and what makes them engaging and apply that to energy applications. So I think gamifications, leaderboards, challenges, contests are part of the puzzle that helps some set of people, but it's, again, we're not creating games. We're taking those concepts and building them into broader energy solutions.
Thank you. A quick reminder, I'm Jesse Burst. I'm joined by Patty Durand of Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative, Dr. Paul Cole from Tendril, and Delta Sunderman of Duke. And we're in our Q&A section here as part of this first in a series of webinars on the science of customer engagement. Paul, I'll start with you and then follow up and ask Patty what her plans are for SGC in this realm. But Brian wants to know if there's these kinds of things are available for other segments like the commercial office segment.
Yes, on the commercial side, we do provide some of the similar kind of products for a commercial audience as well.
And Patty, will you be expanding your research into commercial space, do you expect?
We don't have plans to do that right now per se, although we do have a piece of research this year we're really excited about. It's getting ready to start in May on how to engage multi-ethnic communities. And many of those communities revolve around the small to medium business anchor tenants, such as the corner grocery store, the dry cleaner, the local haircut place, all those places that multi-ethnic communities engage around and listen to and take leadership from. And we're going to be doing a piece of research about how to best engage them, and that will involve some small, medium business work.
Delta, a question from Matt who asks if our customers asking for any improvements, changes, additions, and if so, what are they asking for? What kind of feedback?
Well, some of the things that we're receiving is we are hearing from customers that they would like an online. Several of them are very conscientious about sustainability, so they really would like to have an online offer. We've also had some requests for tools, again, online tools where maybe customers can do some analysis for themselves using their own energy data and then do some what-if sort of scenarios.
Daniel wants to know, how is EM&V performed? How are you verifying this? And have the results been accepted by regulators and other interveners?
I'll answer the second question first, which is yes, our M&V has been accepted. That is evident in regard to our regulatory approval in Ohio and the fact that we did the 2 pilots. I can't go into all the math in terms of how the M&V is done, but what we are doing is we do have control groups where we have like homes or similar homes that where we will hold off and not provide the report, and we do comparison against that control group versus our treatment group. We are also doing a lot of process interviews, asking customers about recall. If we provided them with a message or a recommendation, what's their recall? And Jesse, what we've seen there is, customers are remembering things from their report from over 100 days ago. So there's good recall that shows the impact of the reports. But there are experts out there in the M&V world who are able to effectively M&V behavior modification type offers.
Paul, is there any data on persistence, in terms of not just a simple short-term rebound, but just long-term continuation?
One of the longest-term projects that we've studied is the CAPE, and what we've seen over 2.5+ years is maintenance of, on average, 9.3% savings over that period with a web portal application, meaning just a behavioral approach. So we have pretty good evidence that there are cases of long-term savings and persistence just with information and behavior.
Patty, Bob asked about the best ways to use segmentation information. Is it best used for marketing? Is it best used for messaging, trying to kind of influence minds, or can it be used, directly for some of these direct engagement protocols?
I think it's best used for everything. I think that one of the transitions that has to happen in the utility industry is to look at consumers holistically and understand where they are and then meet them at that place. So we do a lot of extrapolating, and we use a lot of our own opinions to imagine how others feel. It's commonly done. I do it. I think everyone does it. Well, if I'm not interested in an online portal, then probably no one else is either. So one of the best ways to use segmentation is to integrate it throughout the utility's operations so that everyone understands consumers fall into different groups, and whichever business unit is thinking of consumers, they have those segments ready. They can use them to create products, to create programs and services, to message them, and to understand how to talk to them when they call into the call centers and how to resolve issues and complaints.
Paul, do you have insights on best use of segmentation insight? Because you see across a wide range of utilities.
I would actually refer that question to Patty in terms of segmentation expertise. What we try and do is understand the segments, and as we build products, make sure we have kind of routes through a product that address most of the differences in attitudes and behaviors.
One more question, and this final question is to Delta. It's from Calvin, and he asks if you're getting involved with the Green Button program. For those of you who don't know, the Green Button is a program promoted by the White House to allow third parties, with the customer's permission, third parties to access interval data so that they can create useful products and services for consumers.
And Jesse, yes, we are. We're looking at being able to provide that service to all of our customers. The energy report really specifically is about residential and folks with 12 months of data and single family. But we're missing out on being able to provide information to all of our customers, and the Green Button would allow us to get this kind of information to more customers.
Delta, I said only one more question, but if I could sneak this one in, it just came in from Jim, and he wanted to know about ROI. You may not be able to answer this off the top of your head, but he says if you're saving 200 kilowatt hours per customer per year at 10 cents per kilowatt hour, then that's saving customers about $20 a year, Jim says. And his question is, how much per customer are you spending to get that?
Well, what I can tell you is that our program is cost effective. In terms of in the jurisdiction that we have approval, that's one of the stipulations on that.
Right.
So I can tell you that based on what we're doing, we are cost effective.
Terrific. Thank you, Delta, so much for your time and for sharing your experiences. Thank you to
Thank
Dr. Paul Cole of Tendril. and to Patty Durand of the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative, and all of you for joining us. Stay tuned for an announcement of another webinar in this series coming up very soon.